So Nathan, I'm going to ask you one pointed question, one kind of just a connected question that's wide open for interpretation or just whatever you're hearing. So what are Notre Dame fans talking about in regards to their expectations for the 22 season? What is concerning to them? What obviously the optimism around Marcus Freeman. I got to think that that's the number one highlight of why they're amped up and pumped up. Of course, Ohio State's the opener next season. I got to think that that's already gaining a little traction, a little buzz, a little talk, especially since Marcus Freeman played there and has had a few words to say about his experience at Ohio State. So I got to think that the fuel is already starting to be fired a little bit for this opening matchup.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. Obviously, I think 95% of Notre Dame fans wanted Marcus Freeman to be the guy when Kelly left. I mean, I think 95% of Notre Dame fans wanted Marcus Freeman to be the next head coach when he originally came as the new defensive coordinator, a year ago or so. So that, I think everybody's pretty much on board there. The buzz around Notre Dame right now, I guess from a 2022, 2023 standpoint, is that those might be Notre Dame's best or most talented teams in a while, which says a lot considering they've made the college football playoff over the last couple of years. They've nearly made the college football playoff this year, but at the same time, it's a much tougher road. And that's not saying that their roads weren't tough over the last couple cycles. I think this year was a little iffy with some of the teams being a little bit down outside of Cincinnati. But next year, for example, I mean, this might be their most talented roster, like I said, in 5-6 years. But they play Ohio State, they play Clemson. USC is probably going to be trending up. They play BYU, who's been a really solid program. So I doubt it's going to be the same as this year, where all those teams end up being down for whatever reason. Ironically enough, they didn't play Clemson this past year when they were somewhat down. So it's going to be a tough schedule for sure. And so it's funny, they went 11-1 this year, or 11-2 if you include the loss in the bowl game. I could see Notre Dame going 10-2 in the regular season this coming year, and people thinking that they're a better team overall. So that's a lot of the talk, is that it could be that, and then maybe in 2023, even though you have essentially a similarly tough schedule. Tyler Buckner, who is expected to be your quarterback over the next couple of years, he'll be an upperclassman. He'll have a year of starting under his belt. If he's not very good, you're probably looking at a transfer or some other big name that is able to come in, whether that's, like I said, whether that's via transfer or, maybe a stud freshman or something like that. So this year is going to be pretty big for Buckner in that regard. And then there's, like I mentioned, at least for this year specifically, you got your entire offensive line back. You pretty much have your entire defensive line back. Your linebacking core should be better than it was, and from this past season. Even outside of Kyle Hamilton, I would argue that the secondary should be better, specifically with him missing, a big chunk of the season. A lot of those guys got some experience. You pretty much brought everybody back in that regard. That was worth anything. A few guys have transferred out, but I would argue it was positive attrition. So yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of been the big talk and then I think the other thing is will Freeman, hit on these coaches? Cause I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, Freeman can be a great head coach, but if he doesn't hit on some of these guys that he's brought in, then, he might be looking for a job in 5 or 6 years.